2nd, 2021, in this public meeting of the State Board, or I'm sorry, the special meeting of the State Board will come to order. This meeting was called in session to provide the board an opportunity to discuss a proposed resolution, but also a broader issue around street safety and safe passage for students across the district. Before we begin tonight, I do want to call the roll to determine the presence of a quorum. So, Mr. Hayworth, if you can please call the roll.
Dr. Gasoy.
Present.
Mr. Chang. Mr. Chang. Ms. Wattenberg. Ms. Wattenberg. Dr. O'Leary.
Present. Only for special.
Dr. Sutter. Dr. Sutter. Ms. Thompson.
Present.
Dr. Reed.
Present.
Mr. Patterson. Mr. Patterson. Mr. O'Sullivan.
Present.
Ms. Lopez.
Present.
Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Bowie. Mr. Bowie. Mr. President, you have quorum.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, you will recall that there was a resolution shared with you based on feedback and discussion. We've decided to not take up that resolution for a vote tonight, with the hopes that over the next few weeks we can engage with the community, provide further engagement from our student representatives, but also to continue to work on the resolution, as well as find other pathways for us to act around this. So for the next, let's say, 20 minutes or so, I'm hopeful that we can both reflect on the merits of the resolution, but also just talk generally around about ways that we can improve safe passage and in particular street safety for our students. We know that there have been a number of occurrences just in this school year alone with some of our young people falling victim to gun violence or violence at the hands of other students. There are constant reports of bullying and crime involving students as they're traveling to and from school. And most recently, there was incidents of students falling victim to drivers or being killed by drivers. Not to conflate all of those things, but it is to say that there's a lot of work that we need to do as a city to ensure our students are safe. So the meeting was called to talk about the resolution. Based on discussion, we've now changed that plan a little bit. But so for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to ask staff if they can set a timer, and we can just allow members to put ideas on the floor, both for how we can improve the resolution, but also what we have to improve safety for students. Any questions before we go? And Mr. Hayworth, if we could set the timer for 3 minutes per member. I'm assuming in my quick math that would allow us to get through those who are present. Not seeing any questions.
Could you turn your volume down a little bit?
Turn it down, yes. Not seeing any questions. Members, if you have comment for the resolution, but also ideas for how we might improve safe passage for students generally, please raise your hand. Representative Reed, I'm sorry for not being more clear. I meant raise your hand in the app, but yes, Representative Reed.
Figured I would use all options. So yes, the Outreach and Advocacy Committee has, considered safe passages and also considered expanding our thought on safe passage. Definitely considerations around student safety, violence, but then also traffic safety. And kind of to the point of the resolution. So we want to maintain that. To the point of the resolution, I offer, instead of focusing on like a single method of increasing school safety, to possibly a way of organizing it could be, even with the Safe Passages program, the 44 clusters, in those clusters doing some outreach to schools or school communities to see like what are their needs. Because it could be a mixture of, like I'll use Garfield Elementary School really wants to stop light and they've painted a curb themselves because it's a traffic safety issue, but they're having, difficulty with getting response from DDOT. I'll also add to that, in the safety assessments or whatever we want to call them, something that will need help with is then figuring out how then do we, follow up and get DDOT to actually do the measures that the communities are saying they want. So that's a summary of my comments. I'm done.
Thank you, Representative Sutter.
I actually think Dr. O'Leary was before me.
Oh, go ahead.
Representative O'Leary.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. Now we have a window between now and the business meeting to, I'm glad we have a panel on safe passage tonight. I think that was one of the reasons that I wasn't really for making a vote today. And also we have our students with us to be able to talk about that at their at their next meeting. And we'll be able to have a lot more, I won't say ammunition, that's probably the worst word to use, but a lot more information to use so that we can have a very slender but strong resolution that touches on all the points, because there are so many of them. We all have our individual problems in the wards, but we also have mutual, and the individual ones are the same all over the city. So I'm really glad that that's what we're going to be doing tonight, is just hear some things. We're going to have this safe passage panel tonight, which will be very helpful, I'm sure. And as Carlene mentioned, the Outreach and Advocacy Committee has been working with Safe Passage, and we have a letter already done that I think I would encourage everyone to read again before we meet again. Great seeing everybody. I don't know if we'll have 3 minutes will work, so maybe we should cut it to 2.
We'll see how far we can go. Representative Sutter.
Thanks. So 2 things I would add to what Representative Reed and Representative O'Leary already said. I had the chance to come speak to the Advocacy and Outreach Committee a few months ago and share my thoughts on this. And one of the things that was sort of underlying that for me was, one, students brought it up at the Ward 6 Bike to School Day. Lots of kids in the neighborhoods in Ward 6 bike or scoot or walk to school, and they raised feelings of a lack of safety, right? Cars speeding through intersections, or people on their commute routes really not recognizing that there were kids on their way to school with their families at that time. So I was pleased that the committee brought it up. But the other thing I think I mentioned then, but is very much on my mind, is that we have a citywide problem with pedestrian safety, or basically safety of all road users. We've seen cars flipped upside down. So even drivers struggle with safety here in the city because of speeding as an issue, or recklessness. So we've got more than 200 schools campuses. If we could improve conditions around schools campuses, we could improve conditions for traffic safety for everybody in DC, for folks who don't have children, for seniors, because we would cover an enormous amount of geography by having a focus on our schools. So I like that framing for us, because it keeps it squarely in our work as a Board of Education, but also enables us to sort of serve the larger good of our neighbors and residents in the city. The second thing I'd add is I had the chance to connect with a woman named Regina Arlotto, who works at DDOT on safe routes to school, along with Derek Hardy. She's actually a Ward 6 neighbor, and she provided to me a lot of information about the studies they do for schools, The schools that are already receiving some measure of support, both programming as well as structural changes around schools, and then a few schools that are getting much more intensive work. But I think it might be interesting if we invite them to speak with us as well about what is possible with DDOT, so that we could make it a collaborative effort, that this letter could land strongly and in the right hands. To Representative Reed's comment, it's funny that sometimes these things just sort of accidentally happen. Our ANC 6A Transportation Committee has been having conversations about the installation of a bike lane. Lots of neighbors have lots of feelings, but Regina Arlotto was present at that meeting, and that's how we got connected. And so from there, we've had some really good chats about this, and I'd be happy to see if she'd come speak to either the advocacy committee or our working session as a whole. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Gosway.
Thank you. I am looking over the resolution again, and I guess, what strikes me is that there's a lot in there that can be related. And I'm wondering, what I would like to know as we discuss this further and hear from more folks is whether it makes sense for all of these different issues around safety traveling to school should be, or if they are most effectively addressed as, one resolution, or if there's a reason why we should separate them out. So for example, there's a line in our resolution about the safe passage language not addressing traffic safety. And I wonder if, I would be interested to hear if that was deliberate. Maybe it's something, we can get insight into from the folks who worked on the safe passage work, or maybe this is something we recommend that is added. But this goes back to the work I did on the Latinx resolution on recruitment and retention, and something that I learned in that process was sometimes you really do have to focus on, a much more narrow set of issues that are specific to a group, right? And in this case, I wonder if dealing with traffic issues, especially in front of our schools, should be something that needs to be addressed separate from, say, violence between students, and then separated again from these much broader crimes that are named in the resolutions. So those are just things that struck me, that it may be a bit too broad to be effective in terms of advocacy or action.
Thank you. Representative Thompson.
Now that my little fur friend and I are in a good place, I really appreciate and respect the work that has already gone into Safe Passage. And for that reason, I think it's actually really important for us to draw on some of the lessons learned around why that was successful, and get us to a point where we are actually looking at legislation and programs that are before the council and the DME today. And when I think about the conversations I participated in Ward 7 as a non-honorable constituent, those conversations were, first, they had a specific focus, which was actually violence, violence from people that children were facing on their way to school. And so that's one thing. Two, they were extensive, and many of the recommendations that we see as like the safe spots and some of the other things actually came from young people. That is one of the reasons I as a member thought it was really important that we not simply take a vote on a resolution, because while that's one tool in our toolkit, I think there are other tools, especially in conjunction with our sister offices, who do phenomenal work. I think of them almost like ants and what they're able to lift up in comparison to the capacity that they actually have. We should lean on them. We should also lean on our student advisory committee and our student reps because they keep us grounded in what's helpful. I will say as the Ward 7 rep, and I do sit on the Advocacy and Outreach Committee, I've really appreciated the conversations we've had about expanding the definition of safe passage because we knew and we were grappling with the fact that it actually did not include traffic safety. When I think about those conversations, I know it is more complicated than just the immediate around schools that my constituents have problems with. I have had the unfortunate experience as an ANC with a young person who was hit on a major thoroughfare and worked to get, a traffic light and a speed camera, and that came to fruition even after it came to fruition after I left the ANC. But for us, our kids literally are doing the traveling, and they're getting hurt at major intersections. They're getting hurt not so much like immediately at school, which is why around school is not their universe. It calls us to look at the fuller, more complicated picture. And so I'll summarize in saying, I think it's really important we lean on our sister offices to think about what we can do and what we can propose as solutions, what we can move forward. We lean on our young people because it is actually their experience that we should be solving for. And I look forward to being helpful in moving that forward.
Thank you. Representative Wattenberg.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, and thank you for having this discussion. When we announced that we were going to have this discussion and have the safe passage discussion, several people did reach out to me to talk specifically about it, and I wanted to raise one piece in particular from one of our ANC commissioners, Chuck Elkins, who was describing his efforts and the efforts of that ANC to get attention paid to streets that didn't have any sidewalks at all, streets that had very unsafe intersections and so on. And one of the things that he raised, which I really had no idea of, is maybe this is a citywide thing, I don't know. There's not a lot of planning. And the city apparently doesn't have sort of a full list of all the tough intersections. It doesn't have a list of all the blocks that don't have sidewalks. And so everything is very piecemeal. There's maybe a commitment to, fix 20 sidewalks in a year, whatever the number is, whatever the issue is, but it's not up against a master plan so that you actually know how much needs to be done and how to get at it. So that said, I would be very interested in, I'm very interested that we're pursuing this, and I will make a point of reaching out to some of our ANCs about it, as well as some of our schools. And I do think reaching out to the ANCs is really important on this for those who have not already. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative O'Sullivan.
Thank you, President Parker, and thank you guys for having this discussion. I want to echo the point that I believe Representative Thompson made about leaning on the SAC and the student reps as a crutch in these discussions. And reading your email that you sent, Representative Thompson, also what you said just now about the importance of the discussion aspect of it all. I think when I've seen the board do its most powerful work, and I always refer back to, I think it was last July when I think a meeting we had about, or maybe it was, last July meeting we had about in-person reopening. I think we had so many public witnesses that, I'd like to believe it ended up influencing the mayor's decision to sort of wait on reopening, I think that following week. So I think, when it comes to how we can best use our tools, I think Representative Thompson is spot on with that. because I think when people are aware what the problem is and they can hear directly from the people who are impacted by it, I think the message resounds more with people. And I'd also encourage you guys, the Student Advisory Committee has another meeting next Monday. We'll reach out to you guys. We're still figuring out exactly what we are going to do, but I know safe passage is something that has been brought up. This year, we're trying to work with Mr. Dan Davis, the Office of the Student Advocate, to form a partnership, because we're hoping we can do a citywide survey for high school students on a number of things in terms of how school is right now, entering the building, on a number of safety issues. So if you guys have things that you think should be input into that survey, definitely email us. I'm not sure if we'll extend an invitation for this next Monday meeting because we have a specific purpose for that, but we meet 2 weeks after that. So just stay in communication with us and let us know how we can be of help. There are a lot of SAC members this year who feel very strongly about a number of these safety issues, and we want to also make it an opportunity for them to, I'd say, maybe more known that they can come out to these public meetings and testify. Hopefully in October, we can get a strong showing from SAC members on a number of these things, because even from those of you who attended the SAC meeting last, I guess a couple weeks ago, there was a lot they had to say.
Thank you. Representative Patterson.
Yes, thank you, President Parker. Want to go back a little bit. Prior to COVID, in my normal job at KIPP, we worked very closely with the deputy mayor and a lot of other community leaders on safe passage and engaged the citywide people on this, particularly high schoolers throughout the city, held town halls and everything on this. One of the things that I'm seeing that we need to bring to bear in this as well, because we took actually 4 council members on tours, including at that time the student advocate Faith Hubbard. And we walked a lot of these areas to see what they were like. One of the biggest indications that we saw and was really a big indication of how children, students, so to speak, traverse the city, because we know they have choice and they get throughout the whole city, is that a lot of the metro stops, and we forget about WMATA and the role that they play in this, is that I got up with a student at 5 o'clock in the morning in Ward 8, and it took me almost 2 hours to get to KIPP on Brentwood, for the simple fact of how that all plays into a part of, buses being full at different stops and how they move back and forth. We also see that as some of the reasoning behind the microbuses that we currently have that is coming out of the deputy mayor's office. So I would implore us to be very conscious of the metro stops and where they are, and the frequency of the buses that actually take our children back and forth to school, how we get them there. KIPP DC spends over $250,000 currently to actually move kids from their current high school at KCP following the incident, which you noted in the resolution, of Kimon getting killed right at the metro stop in front of the school on the 3rd day of school this year. And we spent $250,000 taking kids both to the Minnesota Avenue stop directly from the school and over to Anacostia. So I would implore us to make sure that as we're considering this overall plan, that we look at that as well, because that has a huge impact of how the kids move. And it starts as early as elementary children who are taking their siblings, trying to move on buses and get throughout the city. So I would ask that we also consider that as we're looking at resolutions and solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Kassoy.
I'll yield my time to you if you wanted to wrap up. I know we only have 4 minutes, so.
No, I appreciate that. I would just say I ditto much of what has already been said in terms of the great work that has already been done. In fact, much of the resolution in terms of the therefore statements come from recommendations from our sister offices. So in terms of reflecting on the definition of safety, in terms of expanding safe spots, in terms of making sure there is greater coordination or that we're expanding the safe routes that are already in place, those were directly lifted from the student advocates materials. I would also say, to Representative Sutter's point earlier, there is something to be said about the need for improved traffic safety for all people, but especially our students, and that there is an interest in improving the safety immediately around our schools for the impact that that would have. I know, again, I've had countless conversations with Ward 5 neighbors, spoke throughout the city. I know we've seen an outcry continuously, not just this year, not just after the latest incident, but for years for neighbors saying that there needs to be something done. And my hope was that the board could lean in here to the points that we're already making to make the case that if we even started with our schools, we could both make our kids more safe, but also improve street safety for everybody. The points are well taken in terms of greater collaboration. And so this is what I would recommend before we take a motion to close and adjourn for our public meeting. Representative, or to our student representatives, I will coordinate with you all to get the resolution to you. It would be great if during your meeting, I know it sounds like you're going to cover the topic, and if it's not possible, but it would be great if you all could give direct feedback. I will also work with Representative Reed, and we talked about it a couple of times in alignment with her work over the advocacy committee, but we'll welcome everybody to come to the working session with just ideas around how we could both make the resolution stronger and align on very concrete ideas. What I'm hearing from people is that there's a lot in it, and that is true because there are a lot of facets to safe passage. A question that I would put out to you all is there one area we want to lean in more than other areas? Or do we want to work towards a more comprehensive solution? And so that is something maybe we can think on leading up to our upcoming work session. So again, thank you for this conversation. It was helpful to hear reactions, put ideas on the table. We are now going to switch gears to our public meeting, and I will take a motion for adjourning this special meeting.
Hey, sorry, President Barker, this is Alistair. I just want to flag what Ebony Rose said, though, of making sure that we're also considering what other actions we can take besides passing a resolution, right? To make sure that this actually gets to the outcomes we want to see. But otherwise, sorry to interrupt. Yep, very supportive.
Absolutely, yes. So the resolution is on the table, but as I mentioned, as in my opening remarks, if there are other ideas, please feel free to suggest them, bring them to the working session, flag them for Representative Reed and her committee, so that we can take action on them. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So move.
Is there a second?
There you go.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning this special meeting, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. At 5:30 p.m., this special meeting is adjourned.